Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Danielle Ballard, postdoctoral fellow.
I'm Dr. Erin Cantwell. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist with an emphasis in both children, families, and parents, and chronic health and chronic pain conditions.
We work at CareLA. It's a group practice specializing in working with children, adolescents, and families. And today, we're located in Los Angeles, California. Today, we are going to talk about chronic pain and some interventions that we use with our clients, as well as some CBT-based practices that focus on mindfulness. This talk is for people that struggle with chronic pain, or caregivers of children or adolescents that struggle with chronic pain, or people just curious about chronic pain. So chronic pain is pain that persists for a long period of time. We don't know a lot about chronic pain and why it happens, and sometimes it can be minimized by doctors and is seen as this invisible disability, right? So interventions can sometimes be really challenging, and people that have chronic pain really, really struggle. And Erin has her own story with chronic pain.
So I think a lot of things, and I think what I want to start with is the message that what we're talking about today isn't saying that the pain is all in your head or that the pain isn't real, because it's very real. We're just learning how do we live alongside that pain, and what can we control, and what aspects of the situation can we control so that our lives are not as impacted. And so I, for most of my life, had abdominal pain. It wasn't as extreme as it got until I was in my 20s. And at that point, my life became very small. And a lot of the answers that I was getting was, I'd go to the doctors and they'd say, well, you're not supposed to be in that much pain, or we don't know what's causing that pain, or it's in your head, or there's nothing we can do. And all of those messages over and over again leave you kind of feeling in a loop, because here you are not functioning, right? Like, I'm not able to function. I'm not able to do the basic things in life. And yet I'm being told by the medical professionals that there's nothing that they can do, or that I shouldn't be in this much pain. So that's playing its own loop. That's like a secondary issue that you run into. So the message I really want to make sure that's clear is to make sure we say that the pain is very real. What you're experiencing is actually happening to you. There's no doubt about that. It's a matter of where in that process can we control something. And then I was introduced to a fantastic group at UCLA, their pediatric pain program. It was run at the time by Dr. Lonnie Zeltzer. And so they put together a team based on what my needs were, and that incorporated CBT therapy, acupuncture, movement and physical therapy, hypnotherapy, which was intense visualization, and got me to a place in my life where I was able to function and continue to function and thrive, and not be limited by the amount of pain that I was in. And at no point did anybody in that program tell me that I shouldn't be in this much pain, or they don't understand why I'm in this much pain, or that the pain isn't real and I just need to go to therapy. So I don't want people to understand that coming to a therapist like us is anyone saying to you, this is in your head and therapy will fix it, because that's not the case. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that process works and where in that process we can intervene.
Yeah. I think really too, like, the root of CBT, and especially when it applies to chronic pain, is coping and improving function and functionality, right? Because I think something that people struggle with is this idea that, like, maybe if I do this, the pain will go away and it will be gone. But that's not always the case, right? And that's a hard reality to accept. But really what we can do is, if we can focus on, okay, my pain was X amount today. I still had pain today, but I was able to, like, make my bed. I was able to go to school. I was able to drive myself somewhere.
Yes.
We focus on the things that we can control,
right,
instead of, oh, my pain's an 8 and I'm going to use that number to define
the day.
The day.
Yeah. So, like, one of the things we talk about in CBT is the pain cycle. And so I give an example of myself. Like, I would maybe get up in the morning and all of a sudden I'd have some stomach pain and I'd feel a little nauseous. And in that, oh my God, so it goes to really quickly, I'm going to be sick. My day is ruined. I'm not going to be able to do anything. All of those thoughts run into my head immediately. And what happens then for me is I start to feel, based on those thoughts, more anxious, scared, frustrated, sad, kind of hopeless because now the day is over. That's done. And what I think we need to then do, or what I then can do based on those thoughts, would be some of the things like not getting out of bed, not moving, what else? Avoiding going out of the house. I became housebound for a while because you're so comfortable there that it's like an extra stress to go out. So all of those things, which then in turn leads to muscle tension, my breathing getting shallow, fatigue. So all of those things that I'm now feeling based on the thoughts that I have put me into this place where I am actually making the nausea worse and the pain worse. And we do that because those thoughts have now put us into fight or flight. It's not just uncomfortable or really, based in reality. It's now I projected the whole day based on a few moments in the morning.
Yeah. I think something when we talk about the pain cycle is, and a way that we might teach the pain cycle to people is maybe by showing them a picture that has a lot of a busy picture that has like a lot of different colors in it, right? And then I might ask them to focus on finding just the red things. And when you're focusing on finding just the red things, you don't notice the colors of what else, like anything else that's happening in the picture, the other shapes that are happening in the picture, because our mind is so powerful. Like what you were saying, when you're focusing on the pain, that's like kind of all you're thinking about, right? Instead of maybe the going outside or maybe taking that shower or the other sensory experiences that your body can also take in, instead of focusing on the pain, which makes it feel louder, and thinking about other things might not make it go away, but it creates space for other things to exist in your reality.
And when she's talking about how the focus of that activity, when you ask them to look for the other colors, they're now focused on the red. So you tend to see more of what you attend to. So, right? So you're attending to looking for those red things. That's what you see, to the exclusion almost of everything else. And so learning to use that same tool that might hyper focus on our pain, now we're taking that pain, that focus, and looking it outward and intentionally looking for something else. And that people sometimes say that's distraction, but you're actually using a muscle and building that focal attention, not just distracting yourself by going on a screen or, going to TV. Not that those things are bad, but this is actually making an active decision to go, I'm not going to focus here. My focus is actually going to be over here. And then you tend to see that more. When you're with families or whatever, and you're driving and you go on a trip and you're looking for driver's license plates that are out of state, you tend to see more. I don't think necessarily there are more all the time, but you tend to see more because you're looking for it. So it's that idea, I think, that plays into it. And I think with the pain cycle, it's about where in that cycle, where do we have control? Because one thing I think that I felt a lot of was I had no control. Like the pain is happening to me and there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. And so that also leads to its own sort of, maybe depression in a way. Like I have learned helplessness. I cannot do this. I'm not able to do any of the things that normal people are able to do. And so trying to figure out in that cycle, where can I make changes? Like, can I make changes to the way I'm thinking about it? Is my day ruined? Like just taking that thought at 8 a.m., do I know that my day is ruined? Is my day going to maybe be a little harder? Can I hold that two things might be true? That the day is going to be hard because I'm in pain and I can do ABC. Or instead of avoiding the whole activity, why don't I just set up, okay, I'm going to do 10 minutes of this, which we'll talk a little bit more about pacing later and how to incorporate that. Or instead of laying in bed so that my muscles get more tighter and my focus is all in there, maybe I get up and I walk around and get some fresh air. Or I do some diaphragmatic breathing, or one of the tools, the mindfulness tools that you're talking about. So you have a place to interrupt that pain cycle and make a change. Is it going to change the intensity of the pain I feel? Maybe not, but it's going to be a way in which I can deal with that feeling of pain.
Yeah. So Erin has said one of the important parts to focus on is looking at what part of this process do we have control over. And something that we like to talk about is this idea that two things can be true at the same time, right? It doesn't mean that one is less true than the other, right? Or we have to be really rigid in our thinking. If I feel like I have pain, then I can't do any of these other things. So some examples of that are, it's going to hurt and I can also handle it. Or it's going to be hard and I know I will survive it. Or it's heavy right now and I'm able to do X, Y, Z, right? Focusing on that functionality piece, which then brings us into behavioral activation and also the use of pacing.
And I think one thing I want to mention about pacing, and then we can also talk about the thoughts too, is the reason why pacing is so important. And what I mean by pacing is when you are not experiencing a heavy pain day, people go, oh my God, I don't know when I'm going to experience a pain day again. So I'm going to go balls to the walls. I'm going all out.
I'm able to clean my room.
Yeah.
I feel actually fine to clean my room. So
My whole room, and then end up tiring themselves out. And so the idea is that you're going to build in those timing for those types of tasks and the things that you want to do in increments. You're going to have like sort of a systemized way of doing it. And then also include in that, in times when you feel bad, pacing then too. So it's not an all or nothing. Again, it's sort of like what Danielle is saying, we don't have to be so rigid. It's not all or nothing. So my pain is bad in the morning. I may not be able to do this in the moment, but maybe in like 30 minutes, I'm going to spend 5 minutes doing this and then stop and make it a hard stop so that you're not saying 5 minutes and then you're feeling better so that you keep doing it. Because then you're leading again with the how you feel. And what we're trying to do is not have you lead with how you feel, but lead with your behavior, and that's behavioral activation. Doing it first, the feeling better comes later. And so being able to do that also gives you an area again in that pain cycle where you can control something, some aspect of it, because that feeling of out of control and that the pain is just so overwhelming you can't do anything is really hard.
Yeah. Some
Some of the things that come into play when we are talking about pain and functioning and, is that there's a fear that if you do the pacing and you do just a little bit and people see that you can do it, they start to think, oh, she's better now.
Yeah.
And
raise their expectations.
they raise the expectations, and then you start to feel pressure. So it's like, I don't even want to do a little sometimes, because then they're going to see that and run with it. So for family members, for parents, for people supporting those people in their lives, to understand that concept that they're doing the best they can given that day, and not to put expectations or change the way that you expect them to show up.
Because really that thought is very protective. It's like, it's not that I don't want to do it. It's that I'm afraid that if I'm able to today, then what if tomorrow I'm not able to, and then I'm being forced to, and I feel, and I'm not able to, right? Like I don't want to set myself up for failure.
Yes, totally.
So I think it can be really important for people to think about that. Like,
Right.
okay, in this environment, I'm going to do the best I can. And just because I'm able to do it today doesn't mean I have to do it tomorrow. But there needs to be this idea between parents and people struggling with chronic pain that we're going to take it day by day. Right. To not futurize and think about the future, because that's when the anxiety kind of starts to really rise up inside of us.
Yes.
And makes it really, really difficult for us because we don't know about tomorrow. Right. And I think thinking about today, using the data that we have is really important.
Yeah.
Focusing on the data.
That kind of brings up for me this thing that used to happen when I was struggling and my mom was trying to be supportive, is sometimes she would just say to me, just take a shower. And I would be like, but that's so hard. I mean, and that was really hard to actually take a shower. However, 9 times out of 10, she was right. If I took the shower, it changed my scenery. And yes, I was still in pain, but I was in pain and I was clean. So there is some comfort in that little shift. It changes your environment, which changes the way that you feel. Did it make my pain go away? Absolutely not. Was I exhausted sometimes after doing it? Yes. However, I can say that I felt better afterwards, and it was an accomplishment as well to add to. And I think also touching on what you were saying is going back to sort of our pain thoughts. So like, am I saying things like, my day is ruined? Okay, I'm not expecting to take that thought or having anybody take that thought and go, my day is going to be a great day. Like, I don't want anybody to think that we're taking this negative thought to a positive. I just think we need to take it to more balanced. Like you said, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So me setting out with the day that my day is ruined and then setting my day up accordingly is going to probably show up like we talked about. Things are going to look like they're ruined. However, if I put evidence to it by using the two thoughts so that, the two things can be true at the same time, and say something like, I'm in a lot of pain right now, and I'm not sure exactly what my day is going to look like, or I'm in a lot of pain right now. In 30 minutes, I'm going to check back in to see where I'm at and what I can possibly do with this day. So you're not giving yourself this all or nothing, like I should just go back to bed because my day is over, right?
Yeah.
And you see that with depression as well, or anxiety, like the avoidance and anxiety is really clear. It's a clear tie there. It's like, I'm going to avoid this thing altogether because I can't tolerate that.
Yeah. And then what you're doing is you're teaching yourself that you can't tolerate.
Yes, that these things are unsafe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think part of pacing and behavioral activation and even interventions that we kind of talk about as far as like focusing on neutral are, how can I break this thing up to make it easier for myself to engage in it when I'm feeling ready or feeling able to? And so if that's like, you really love painting and it sounds exhausting to like actually paint something, like maybe just getting your paints out and like having them on the table so that you can see them and they're easy to access when you are ready. Or if you're not able to lift heavy things, like when someone comes over saying, hey, can you grab that box of my art supplies down for me so that I have them accessible, so that if I can't get out of bed, like at least they're near my bed and I can reach for them. Because really this idea of neutrality and what Erin was saying is it doesn't make it all better, but it helps us focus on something else that's less distressing for a moment, right? And that can give our nervous system a break, right? The alarm that's constantly going on in our body that's telling us that we're not safe. If we're able to focus on something that's a little more neutral for a little while, we can reset and let our nervous system rest, so that we might actually feel able to do something more for ourselves.
Yeah, because when you think about what's happening, when you have that thought of my day is ruined has now starting to trigger my sympathetic nervous system, and it's becoming aroused. So that's only going to create more problems because like the breathing gets shallow, right? And there's a reason. This is all your biological normal response to fear. However, what you're fearing isn't dangerous. You know, we're not in a danger zone, but we're flying into that method, which for me, my digestion was shutting down because that's what happens when you go into fight or flight. And that made the nausea worse, my muscles more tight, which is going to make the pain worse. So being able to interrupt that cycle and not catastrophize, that's the word, catastrophize those thoughts and futurize before we know what's going to happen, you know?
And I think that also connects us to more mindfulness intervention, which are like focusing on every circle you can find in the room, or focusing on everything that's the color blue, or, walking yourself through your safe space in your mind, like doing to the last baseball game you went to, or like last time you went to Disneyland, or I mean, you have one that you used to count.
Yeah. So in doctor's offices and hospitals, a lot of them have those little weird holes in the ceiling. I don't know what they're for. And but there's a lot. And so one time in particular, I was in the hospital and there was absolutely nothing I could do. My body couldn't move. I was just very sick. And so I counted all of those holes in the hospital. There were thousands. And I remember the nurse coming in at one point. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like counting the holes but the thing was, I went from being, I would say, hysterical in my despair to being uncomfortable and still in pain, but it was calmer. There was a more calmness to it because my focus was elsewhere. And so that really can be really powerful. The other thing I think to add to that is the hypnotherapy that I had done for a few years was specifically very visual. And we created this space. It was actually based on a memory of mine from when I was younger and at the beach and the sun and all the things. And using all of the senses on a daily practice, recreating this scene got me to a point for doing it day after day after day. And it was a lot of practice, and it wasn't something I was like fully on board with, and never thought, to be honest with you, I never thought any of this was going to work. And so I thought I was different. And, even with all the knowledge behind it and people telling me, I really didn't understand it. And then I learned more about how it actually changes in the brain. But one of the things I learned how to do was I would get very cold when I would get sick and when I'd be in a lot of pain. So this particular visualization, I was able to get to such a point that it would actually warm me up. And so, I admit I haven't done it regularly then, so I don't know if I can pull it back, but it is something that I did literally every day. And it got to the point where it saved me a few times, because sometimes there's nothing more you can do. You've got all the blankets. It's more of an internal sensation. But being able to really put yourself, by using all of your 5 senses, you're connecting the neurons in your brain. So it's not like woo-woo, right? Like, where I think maybe my interpretation 20 years ago, where we didn't know, or maybe a little longer than that, we didn't know the science behind it and the neuroscience behind it, and learning that neuroscience behind it, I don't know, somehow validated it for me, and it made sense for me, which made me more willing to do it.
Yeah.
And
The
so,
more bought in you are to something, the higher likelihood it's going to work.
yeah,
Too.
totally. And I think it's okay also to say that this may not work today,
Yeah.
right? Like, whatever tool, I had to have a bunch in the toolbox, because one may work one day and then it didn't work the next day. So you kind of want to build up that, coping toolbox at the same time as you are figuring out what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Like deep breathing, I remember when I get really anxious, and when I call it hysterical, I mean, that's probably not the best word, but that's kind of how I describe it, because I felt so out of control emotionally. People would say, well, take deep breaths. In those moments, I could not take deep breaths. So it was really, really hard. And it wasn't until I learned the 4-7-8 breathing where it was like, okay, this is giving me like something that's physiologically slowing my body down, and then maybe delving into some deep breathing. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about what 4-7-8 looks like?
Yeah. Yeah. So 4-7-8 breathing is an inhale for 4. So holding for 7. And then exhaling for 8. And what that helps us do, if our inhale is shorter than our exhale, it allows our nervous system to relax. And the thinking about the counting alongside the actual breathing allows our brain to kind of distract and to think about some other kind of a neutral stimulus, right? The counting, while our body physiologically calms by taking that really deep breath, holding it, and then exhaling slower than we've inhaled.
Yeah, it can be really, really helpful. I also do think that shifting your environment, even if it's like you're in your bed, if there's a way for you to get to a chair, if there's a way for you to get outside for a few minutes, like just shifting that environment so that you're seeing different things, you're getting different stimuli. And for me, that was always really helpful, although I never really wanted to leave my bed in those moments. It's like you want your bed, you just want to stay there. But again, that's staying stuck in that moment. And it's not always possible that you're going to be able to get up and do that. But if you can.
Sitting up or sitting down.
Exactly.
Right? Because I do think that there starts to become this association with environment, right? And so if every time we're in our bed, we're feeling not good, right? Like sitting up or opening a window or sitting next to the bed, that might even just changing that allows our body to kind of recalibrate the new situation we've created for ourselves.
Because those associations are strong, and even strong in the opposite way, where it's hard, I know, to leave your house when you're feeling uncomfortable, sick, in pain. You just want to feel safe, and being out in the world can be a lot, right? Like there's a lot of stimuli coming in, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. However, the more we make our world smaller into that place, the harder it becomes, because our brain is now training itself that outside world is dangerous and I can't cope. It's not that, it's going to be hard to cope, it's that I can't. And so your brain starts to learn that, and then it becomes that much more difficult sort of to break that pattern. And I think that kind of leads into more talking about focusing on functioning versus how bad the pain is. So we all know, like the pain scale, you go to the hospital, you go to the doctor, they say, what's your pain level?
Well, these faces.
Totally.
Right? Which face do you feel most like today? And for some people, they're like, there's no face. How do I connect with you? It's so bad.
Yeah, totally. Like there's nothing on here you don't understand. Or, it's hard also to rate when you're feeling in distress. It's hard to rate the difference between a 10 and a 7, or something like that. And what are we focusing on when we're focused on how bad we feel? We're focused on how bad we feel, right? And that's not necessarily going to be the measure of how we live our life. If we're living our life with chronic pain, I live with chronic pain every day.
Always going to be on the scale.
Yes, it's always
Never
there.
going to be,
It's always there, but what can I do today? What am I able to do despite having this pain? And it becomes, I don't want to say it becomes easy, because it doesn't, but what it does become is it's almost like background noise sometimes, where you're able to get yourself to a point where it's background noise because I'm so focused on what I'm functioning. I'm looking for what I can do, not how bad it feels, because it feels bad. And for most people who suffer from chronic pain, it feels bad all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And something that we've talked about offering is creating like a functionality scale. So we'll create a download for people watching where we're not saying like, don't use the pain scale. Like if your doctor tells you to do that and you need to, we understand. But something for you to use or people close to you in your life, a functionality scale, like I might be experiencing this and I'm still able to do these things, and kind of running through a list of like, okay, so maybe even though I'm experiencing pain, I'm still able to, engage in these activities that either bring me joy or make me feel good about myself, or even just like take care of myself, like things that I need to do to take care of myself.
And like avoiding the shoulds too. Like I should be able to do this like everybody else. I should be able to do that like that. Again, that's another one of what we call cognitive distortions or ants. Like there is no should in this. There is only what is.
Yeah. What are you able to do? Right? And more of like objective and subjective.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that can also lead to this idea of focusing on what you said, like what hasn't pain taken from you.
Yeah. And I think for me, when I think about it, it hasn't taken my imagination, which has helped me get through, And I think for other people, whatever their
music or friendship,
creativity, connection, all of those things, I think are important to focus on, like what hasn't taken from you, and how can we enhance that in your life,
Use that as one of our strengths to help us rise above the challenge when it comes, right? Like how to use it as a coping skill to manage our lives.
Yeah.
Thank you all for watching, and we hope that this talk has been helpful. And make sure you check in the bio or the comment section so that we can add some downloads for people to use. And stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.